6.1, greatest common factor, which is known as GCF. And I will touch on grouping. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on factoring by grouping, but I will touch on it. Probably show you about 1 or 2 examples. Now, focusing on GCF first, greatest common factor. GCF meaning if I give you 1 or 2 or more actual terms, can you pull out what they have in common? The biggest number they have in common, okay? So starting small, if I were to give you the numbers 12 and 16. 12 and 16. And we're looking at the factors of 12, the factors of 16, the numbers that make them up. What is the biggest number they have in common? 4. Do y'all see 4? 4 is the biggest. Now, back in some high schools or some elementary schools, they'll have you do the whole factor tree and blah, blah, blah. I would hope that we could kind of look at it and tell you what number is the biggest. So the GCF here would be 4. Okay? What about the numbers 18 and 24? 18 and 24. Now, 9 don't go into 24, but I heard somebody say 6. Y'all agree with 6? 6 times, 3 makes 18, and 6 times 4 makes 24? 6 would be their GCF. Good. What about the numbers 50, 30, and 5? 5. That was pretty obvious, 5, because I actually gave you the number itself. 5. That's the biggest that they're going to have in common. Okay. What if I was to put some variables with it? Let's do $18W and 27. $18W and 27. What would the GCF be? 9. Y'all agree 9? But would it have a W on it? No, why? Very good. They both got to have it. Okay, so 9, W would not be part of your GCF. 9 is the only thing they got in common. Does everybody understand that? Make sure when you're looking, even when I start putting variables on it, they all have to have it. Okay? What about 30x to the third plus 40x to the sixth? Not plus, Lord. Just put a comma. I'm getting ahead of myself. And let's do 50x to the 7th. 30, 40, 50. What number would be the greatest with those 3? 10. Very good. Now, everybody got some X's though. So how do you know how many to actually pull off as a GCF? The one with the least? The one with the biggest? Okay, look at it like money. If 30 don't have but $3, 40 has $6, and 50 has $7. If I'm trying to take something away from all of them, it's got to be the less, right? I can't take 7 from all of them because some of them don't have what? 7. Does that make sense? So when it comes to the variables, it's kind of like the reverse. It's not the greatest. You got to pull out the smallest that you can pull. Does that make sense? It's the greatest in your numbers, but with the variables, it's the smallest. So I can only take off x to the what? To the third. Because I can do that to everybody. Does that make sense? So we got to remember that with our variables, it's the least. With your number, it's the greatest. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's do about one more of these. I was at 5, this would be 6. 45, C to the third, D. 75, C. 90, D. And 15, CD. Just 15? 15? 15, 15, 15? Okay. Why not C or D? Huh? 75 and 90 don't have both. Very good. So you can't pull off C or D because they don't all have it. Very good. So the only GCF you can pull off is 15. Does everybody see that? Want to make sure y'all understand with these variables, you got to look at it. They all got to have it. Everybody got to have a C. Everybody got to have a D. If not, it's not a GCF. We good with that? Now, let's put this into factoring sense. When we use GCF, we're normally pulling off the GCF and in parentheses, writing what's left over. That's how you're going to be dealing with GCF and factoring. So on 7, if I was to give you x squared minus 4x, and we're factoring still by GCF, what would the GCF be? X. Does everybody see there's no number in common because you got a 1 versus a 4, but they both have an X. Good. So we're going to pull off the X, and in parentheses, I need you to write what's left over. X minus who? 4. Very good. Now, how you write that, you're subtracting. Remember, when you pull off, it's the same concept. Remember, we talked about exponents, and we said in division, you do what with your exponents? Subtract. When you take off of a GCF, you're dividing it off. Okay? That's really what you're doing. You're dividing off. So x squared, if I take 1 from him, you got 1 left over. And then 4x, if I take that 1x from him, you just got 4 left over. Does everybody see that? That's what my answer would be if I'm factoring by GCF. Seen this before? Okay. What about 8x squared plus 6x? 8x squared plus 6x. 2? 2x? Y'all agree? Between 8 and 6, 2 would be the greatest, and both of them have at least 1x. So when you divide it off, what you have left, now you're dividing off a number. So what would be on this first term? 4x, good. Plus 3, very good. Do y'all see that? Now you do know you can always check yourself by doing what? Distribute it back, multiply it back. Does that make sense? What's your question? You divide. You're going to say 6 divided by 2 gives you 3. That's why I use country terms. You know, my vocabulary is not in the textbook. You take it out, you pull it out, but you're dividing. That's that's technical. We're dividing, okay? Does everybody see that? And yeah, make sure y'all do understand. That's the neat thing about factoring. If you multiply this back, that's the reason why we did the lesson on multiplying first. You should get your original. Does that make sense? So that would give you 8x to the second plus 6x. So you always check yourself. Okay. Let's do this one. -12 x to the third minus 6x squared. What we got as a GCF? Negative 6x squared. Good. Negative 6x squared. And I'm glad y'all pulled the negative off. They both negative, so that's a GCF. Make that GCF be negative. Very good. Now that means your leftovers are going to be positive. Y'all do understand that? When you divide a negative into a negative, you have a positive leftover. Okay? So what would be left off that first term? 2x. Good. What's next? Plus 1. You got to put that plus 1. Now, you're probably looking at the whole thing divides out. Negative 6x squared divided by negative 6x squared. That cancels. But you can't leave it with nothing there. If it's the same thing, that cancels to 1. So you got to put that 1. Does everybody understand that? If you had originally 2 terms, your inside better also have 2 terms. Does it make sense? You got to have that holding spot. Questions? Okay. What about 11w to the third minus 100? Huh? Can't factor it? No GCF? Very good. That's as far as that's going to go. Okay? You can't pull off a GCF but 1. They don't have nothing else in common but 1. So it might be on my labs that you have to say no common factor. This might be the choice that you pick. Except 1, but I always tell students this is already simplified. It's already simplified. You can't do nothing with that. Does that make sense? Okay. What about 5x to the 5th plus 25x to the 4th minus 20x to the 3rd? Five x to the 3rd? That sounds great. In parentheses, let's write what's left over. Off the first term, what we got? X squared, good, plus 5x, good, minus 4. Very good. Okay, sit down. Okay, what about 45 q to the 4th, p to the 5th, minus 36 q, p to the 6th, plus 81 q squared, p to the 3rd. None? Y'all agree? Good. All right. All right, y'all said 9, 1Q, and P to the 3rd. Y'all agree? You go to each one and check. Now, we all in agreement they got both variables, right? Everybody got a P and Q. but you need to check what's the smallest up there. So when I look at my Q's, I see 4, or understood 1, and then 2. So you pull out 1. When I check my P's, I see 5, 6, and 3, so I pull out 3. Does everybody see that? All right, tell me what's left over. 5, Q to the third, P to the second. Good. Minus 4, P to the third. No Q's, right? Good. Plus 9Q and no what? P's. Very good. Now, always check yourself when you go back and look at this parenthesis. Make sure you don't have nothing in common. Meaning, 5, 4, and 9 ain't got nothing in common, right? Then you check those variables. Does everybody have a Q? No. Does everybody have a P? No. If you would have answered yes, you didn't pull off the greatest. Does that make sense? If you still had P's on everybody, if you still had Q's on everybody, you didn't pull out the greatest you could take from everybody. Does that make sense? So make sure what's in that parenthesis is done. Ain't got nothing in common. Question. Y'all good with GCF? Okay. Now next, I'm going to touch on grouping. And I'm going to just barely touch, because I don't want to focus too long on grouping. 5M plus MN plus 20 plus 4N. The reason we have a method called grouping is because GCF doesn't work across the board. When I look at it, there's some things that's in common, but everybody don't have an M, everybody don't have an N, and the numbers are not on all 4 of them, okay? So grouping is a method we use when we got 4 terms, normally. That's when 2Y, okay, minus 7, okay? On the second 2, what do they have in common? 4. And I'm going to put plus 4, right? Because you're taking off a positive 4. What's left when you divide off 4? 2Y? 7. Minus 7. Negative 28 divided by 4 is a negative 7, right? Now, do you see your parentheses match? Do y'all see they match? So one of your parentheses has to be the 2Y minus 7, and the other parenthesis got to say what? Very good. 3X plus 4. Do y'all see that? Y'all still okay? Okay. We're going to do one more, so I'm not staying too long on grouping. 7Z squared plus 14Z minus AZ minus 2A. Okay? Off the first 2, what can I take off? What's the GCF? 7Z. Does everyone say 7Z? What's left over? Good. Z plus 2. Does everyone see that? When you divide off 7 and subtract off the Z? Now, look at the last 2. What's your GCF? Good. Negative. Do you see both of them are negative? Take that off like we did on that other problem. You got negative. You said what? A? Okay? So that means everything left over going to be what? Positive, and it's going to be Z plus 2. Does everybody see that's got to be a plus 2? Because remember, when you divide back, a negative divides into a negative, leaves a positive. Does that make sense? Now, what's your answer? Z plus 2 and 7Z minus A. Do y'all see that? Now, it doesn't matter which parentheses you write first. It's multiplication. That doesn't matter. Do y'all see that? So I'm showing you grouping just in case there's one on the final exam because I don't remember. But we don't focus on grouping like that. Okay? Questions?